Hello, my name is David Brayley and I'm an author of children's books largely based around sport. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity today to speak to you at Neath and Port Talbot Libraries and a short video really where I'm going to be discussing how you guys can come up with creating characters for your stories. Now I'm just going to give you a few little tips about things to consider when creating characters in your stories. Lots of authors will write about characters in lots of different ways, so there are many different ways to go about this, but I'm just going to share with you the way that I approach it when I come to write about characters and things that I try to do in advance really before I even start the actual process of writing about a character. Now, when you come up with a story, you'll obviously have an idea of what your story is going to be about. So it could be an adventure story, it could be a science fiction story. In my case, I write sports stories. So Champion of Champions was about a teenager who dreamt one day of becoming a professional cyclist, but he never really worked hard enough to fulfill that dream until he met a person that inspired him to become a better cyclist. Now, in this story, there were three probably main key characters. There was the young man Daniel, who I based on memories of myself when I was a teenager. And that's a good little tip actually, is that when you come to write stories, including characters, sometimes it might be an idea to base one of the characters on yourself. Because obviously then you'll have a bit of a head start when coming to write about that character, because you can include some of the things about yourself in the story. The other two characters in the story, one was the father of Daniel and the other was the grandfather of Daniel. So I had three different generations of people in which I had to describe. So I had to describe one as an older person, one as a sort of middle-aged person, and then one as a teenage person. Now, when I came to describe those characters, I based them on four sorts of things really that I tend to think about when I write my characters. So what I thought I would do today is just talk you through those four things that I consider when I write characters. And I use these ideas for any character I write. Okay, so the four things, the first one is the physical character of a person. What is my character going to look like? How am I going to describe what they look like? The second thing is the personal character of that person. So what's their personality? What are they like actually as a person? Are they nice? Are they kind? Are they unkind? Are they angry? The third thing I like to think about is, what does my character like and dislike? Because if I know these things, I may not mention them all in the story, but if I know these things, then I can write about that character with much more confidence. And the final thing I always like to do with my characters is give them a backstory. So I want to know what happened and what has happened to this character prior perhaps to introducing them into my story. And importantly, I also need to know what's going to happen to the character as the story progresses. So those are the four things I want to talk about today. So let's basically have a little chat about those. So the first thing I mentioned was the physical character description. Now, when I wrote this book with rugby player James Hook, there was one character in the book, Mr. Kane, who becomes a kind of the bad guy of the story, I suppose. And in our discussions about that character, we decided we wanted to describe Mr. Kane in really minute detail. We really wanted to share with the reader everything about how this gentleman looked. So this is where I would have really gone heavy into the physical description of Mr. Kane. Now, I don't do that with every character in my stories. In fact, in Champion of Champions, I hardly actually describe Daniel, because sometimes I like to leave it up to the reader to picture in their own mind and come up with a creation themselves of what they think this character looks like. But in terms of Mr. Kane, I really felt that I had to describe him down to the last minor detail. And you work that out for yourself. You wouldn't certainly, if you had, say, 10 characters in a story, you wouldn't want to describe all 10 characters in absolute minute detail, but maybe one or two you would. So let's focus on the physical side of a character. What are the things we'd be looking at? Well, first of all, you need to find out, are they male or female? Then you're looking at how old are they? Give them a date of birth. What about their hairstyle, the colour of their hair, how they wear their hair? Haven't they got any hair? Now, one thing that's so important when describing characters physically are the eyes. We can instantly talk about the colour of somebody's eyes. Are they blue? Are they green? Are they hazel brown? But we can also use eyes as descriptive. So they could be staring, wide-eyed. They could be close-eyed, considering. They could be shifty eyes, darting left and right. So eyes are one of the key things you want to think about when describing your character. Then we're looking at just simple things, really. Their height. Are they tall? Are they short? Are they medium height? What is their build? Are they athletic? Are they unathletic? Are they stocky? Are they wiry? Lots and lots of things we can think about when we come to describe them. And then, of course, they're the clothes that they wear. Are you going to make your character very cool with sort of trendy modern clothes? Or are they going to be uncool, a bit like me? I'm not really sure what the cool clothes are that they should be wearing. But all of these things can come together to write and help you write your physical description of your character. Now let's move on to the personal character description, the personality of your character. Now, when we wrote about the physical description, we are looking at what someone looks like. So if we saw a person and we looked at them, what is it we see? As I mentioned, tall, short, dark hair, brown hair, blue eyes, green eyes. But with a personal description of someone, their personality, it's a bit more different, isn't it? Because we can't see inside them to see what they're thinking. We've got to get to know the character. So this is where, when you're describing somebody's personality, you just want to think about all the types of options that you've got available to you. So the person could be happy, could be funny. The opposite, they could be sad, they could be grumpy, miserable. Is your character caring? Are they friendly? Are they calm? Or the opposite, are they quick to rise to anger? Are they uncaring? Do they not want to make friends with anybody? Are they outgoing? Maybe they're shy. You can see here I'm dealing in opposites, and that's quite an interesting thing to go with. We could have a character, for example, who's very confident on the outside, but actually inside they might be very racked with sort of a lack of confidence, almost a shyness, but they put on a brave front. Very, very interesting to go and describe in your story. So are they confident? Are they nervous? Is your character going to be loyal, trustworthy? Or is your character going to be one of those people that waits for the right moment and then they're going to be quite sneaky behind somebody's back? All of these things could be part of the personal traits of your character. Then we're looking at things like, are they fearless? Are they brave? Are they the hero? Or maybe they're really scared. Perhaps they've got a phobia. They hate spiders. Think of all these things. But don't forget, they can be a combination. They don't have to be just one thing or the other. And the best characters actually are the ones that have a mixture of everything. So on the face of it, they might be confident, but actually underneath it all, they're quite nervous and quite wary of things. So consider those things. Now, I always like to jot down with my character before I write them, what do they like? What do they dislike? So what are their likes and dislikes? Think of food and drink. Think of yourself. Do you like milk? No, you hate milk. Okay, so why not have your character hating milk, but loving water or loving orange squash? It might only seem a small thing, but if you pop that into your story, it just gives a little bit more depth to your character. So then you're looking at, you've described what they look like, you've described what they like as a person, and now you're describing the things they like and dislike. So what books do they like to read? Do they like to read sports books like the ones I write? Perhaps they hate sports books and they would never read one. Again, it's quite interesting to drop these dislikes and likes into your story. Moving on, TV and films. I'm sure you guys have got your favourite TV shows, stuff that you watch on the internet. So again, why not drop these into your story? Now, in Chasing a Rugby Dream, for example, our lead character, Jimmy, he loved nothing more than going onto YouTube and watching videos of rugby players, his favourite hero rugby players. It's only a small thing, but it gives the reader a little bit more depth into the character. Why do they like rugby so much that they go away and watch it on YouTube? Now, they might like sport. Like I say, in my books, they might dislike sport. They might like science fiction. They might like reading about horror. Who knows? Fantasy stories. You decide what your character wants to like and dislike. Now, if you're writing stories that reflect you and your stage of life now, it might be that you're going to set your story in school. So then you can talk about, does your character like school? Do they really enjoy being in school? Or can't they wait for the bell at 3:20 to get out of school and get home? Again, really interesting to delve into that side of things. What about how they get on with people? Have they got lots of friends? Do they like making friends? Do they like being part of a gang? Do they like being in the school team or the school choir? Or don't they like being friendly with anyone? Do they rather be on their own? Are they a bit more mystical, that they don't make friends, they don't join any clubs or societies? All of these things, all of these likes and dislikes, they all come together to give you a rounded character. And if you can get the description, the physical description, if you can get their personality, and then you can get some idea about what they like and dislike, you really are starting to create an interesting character for your reader. And the final thing that I'll just talk about today before we finish is the backstory of the character. Now, I love writing a backstory for the character. It may not even appear in my story, but I just want to know what's happened to the character before I even write about them. So I'll give them family members, perhaps. I might work out who their mums and dads are, their brothers perhaps. Maybe they've got sisters and not brothers. Do they have grandparents nearby? Do they live with carers? I like to know all these things before I start writing about my character. I may not put any of these things into my story, albeit if I do, it can be quite interesting for the reader to know exactly where your characters come from. But more for me, the writer, I want to know what this character is, who they are, and where they've come from, their backstory. What are their friends and neighbours like? Do they have teammates? Did they used to play in a different team and they joined a new team? Same with the school. Perhaps they were at a different school and now they've joined a new school. What's the area they come from? Where do they live? Have they always lived there? Did they perhaps live in another part of the town? Perhaps they've come from a different country. Perhaps they've come from England into Wales. Perhaps they come from Scotland. Perhaps they come from Syria. Who knows? But it's interesting for the reader to be shared with this information, but also for you, the writer, to know all about your character. Think of the good things that have happened to them in their life to now. Maybe they were made captain of the school football team or captain of the school cricket team. But ultimately, maybe there are some bad things that have happened to them that have helped shape them. Perhaps they were never picked for the school rugby team, and that was the one thing they were desperate to do, was to play rugby for the team. Maybe the reason that they weren't picked is the thing that drives them on now, and they want to be picked, and that's the one thing that gives them determination. As I said, that doesn't necessarily need to be part of your story, but if you know that as the writer, then you can develop it within the story. What about if there's somebody in their life that they want to make proud? What if it's a grandparent, an uncle, coach of their football team, a teacher? Again, may not be part of your story. It would be quite interesting if it was, but even if it's not part of your story, it gives you, the writer, an idea about this person. And maybe one of the most important things to ask yourself is, what is this person, what is this character going to achieve in your story? Now, if they're the main character, then you've probably got some idea about exactly where it's going to go and exactly how and what they're going to achieve by the end of the story. That would probably come out in your planning. But maybe it's just a side character. In sorry, not Champion of Champions, I'm getting confused. In Chasing a Rugby Dream, we've got friends of Jimmy, Matt, Manu and Kitty. And their sort of journey, in book one anyway, isn't as important as Jimmy's. So as I wrote that with James, I didn't feel I needed to know so much about what was going to happen to them. But I still wanted to write it down for myself. So I know what's going to happen to them. It's just that I haven't shared it yet in the actual book and in the actual story. So all these things come together. The physical description of somebody, the personality of that person, the background and their backstory, And of course, as I just mentioned before this one, their likes and dislikes. And as I said right at the start, there's no one way to do this. This is just the way I like to do it. I just like to jot all these things down before I even start writing about my character. So I give them a date of birth. I find out their middle name. I decide what they're going to look like, what they like to do, where they've been, where they used to live. I write all these things down in a list. And I ask myself these questions for every character before I even start writing. And that means, certainly in the case with my books, if I come and write a second or third book, then I've got this lovely library of characters that I can go back and I can write about, because I've already written and worked out all these wonderful things about them. So there we are. I think that's it. I'll finish here with a quick memory for you. Physical description, personal description, so the personality, the likes and dislikes of that person, and their backstory. But more importantly, where they're going to go within your story. I hope you found this of use, and I look forward to speaking to you again at some point in the future. And good luck with your writing, and good luck with the characters that you choose to create.